Okay, for this video, now we're going to be talking about geometric sequences. So that's the fancy name for a sequence of numbers where we are multiplying by something over and over again to get our next terms. That includes the ability to multiply by positive and negative numbers, whole numbers, integers. We could have fractions and decimals shown on this IXL. But for the most part, in this IXL, we're going to be filling in blanks, and we'll kind of help you figure out what goes in those blanks. The Algebra 1 version, if you're watching this for that class, very, very similar. Same strategies will get you a passing score for that too. Okay, so let's talk about the kind of general outline to a geometric sequence first, and then we'll be able to fill in from there. So it gives you part of it. So every time you're going to have some value a(n). What that means, that's the value at any specified term. So if I specified like the third term, this would be a sub 3 instead of an n, and it would represent the number negative 48 because that's my third term. Okay, and then I have equals. It just shows it as a blank, but a1. So whatever my first term is goes in this first blank here. So like for us, that's going to be a negative 12. So pretty easy to find. Don't have to calculate anything. Just the first number times. So what they have in parentheses there is an r. That's the ratio. That is whatever you are multiplying by over and over again. If you are ever not sure what you're multiplying by, what your ratio should be, you can take any number in the sequence and divide it by the one right before it. That'll give you your r value. So for example, if I do negative 24 divided by negative 12, that spits back a 2. That tells me a 2 goes in that spot. That's my ratio. Before I hit enter, just to finish this off here, it shows us this part, but I would have an n minus 1. So the n represents the step number. So if I am asking about the third step again, a 3 would go in that spot, meaning my ratio would eventually get squared after I subtract that 1. So that's the whole outline there. That represents any geometric sequence. Okay, let's go ahead and submit this and see where we're at. Okay, let's go ahead and clear that off. Okay, so we'll go through a couple here, although this one's pretty quick, and then we'll get to one later in the SMART score too. So 32, 64, 128. Remember, the first blank is going to be whatever my first number is. That's a 32. My second one's going to be whatever I am multiplying by. Remember, if you're not sure, you can take any number in the sequence. Let's say 64. Divide it by the number right before, 32. This one is also 2, so that one works out. There you go. Okay, let's skip ahead and see if we get anything that's crazy different. Not crazy different, but let's go ahead and do this one. My first number, just from looking at the sequence, is negative 4. It's whatever the one on the far left is. And then whatever I am multiplying by. So if you don't see it right off the bat, remember you could do like negative 16 divided by negative 4. That would give us 4 for this one instead of a 2 like the last couple. You may have been able to see that just from looking at the sequence, so it's just going to depend on your ability. And either way is okay. Well done. All right, let's see if they really throw any curveballs at us. I think they do somewhere on the line. Let's do this one too. First number is a negative 21. I notice that I'm flipping signs back and forth. That tells me I know right off the bat my ratio is going to be a negative number. So if I try the calculator and I don't get that, I would know I plugged something in wrong. But we could try our method of dividing to find the r value. Just to be on the same page as all the other ones. So let's try 63 divided by negative 21. It gives me a negative 3. It is a negative like we predicted. That's because a negative times a negative would give us positive, but then that positive number times a negative would give us negative, and it'd just keep flipping back and forth. Okay. Let's show how you would put this in, at least one of the TI-84 calculators, one of the ones that I have. I think the easiest way to do it, the negative 55 would still go in the first blank, but let's talk about how to do that division. And I'll actually talk about like 2 ways to think about it. So if you want to use the same method we've been doing, in the calculator, probably easiest on the ones that I have to just put in parentheses a negative 55 divided by 2 and close the parentheses, and then just put divided by negative 55. Might even want to put parentheses around that if you like to be extra cautious about your negatives. And then that would give you your ratio. But let's talk about another way. Think about this as negative 55 over 1, technically, if there's nothing underneath. Think about on the top only. To get from negative 55 to negative 55 to negative 55, I must be multiplying the top by 1 each time. To go from 1 to 2 to 4, I must be doubling or multiplying by 2 on the bottom. That's another way to think about this ratio. And either method would work out. This one's going to be a little bit more surefire because you're using the calculator, but another way to think about it. All right. And I believe we get ones later on, it might be past 80, where they ask us to evaluate at a given step. So something like this. Okay, so let's fill in our expression like normal, or our equation this time. 1 is my first number. 1 times must be negative 2 to get negative 2. And then it has this part down here where it says a sub 8. What that means is it wants me to find the 8th value. So I'm going to plug 8 in for this n number, and whatever I get back is going to be my 8th term. So I have 1 times, in parentheses, negative 2 to the power of 8 minus 1. Well, that would be like 1 times negative 2 to the power of 7. You could just do negative 2 times itself 7 times, but I'm going to plug that in the calculator. Be careful, remember your parentheses. That gives you a negative 128. If this gives you negative 128, you would then need to multiply it by your first number. But in our situation, that's just a 1, so it's going to stay a negative 128. Oops, 128. All right, so we'll wrap up there. So this is just, once you're into the 90s, putting together the fraction idea along with solving for a certain step. So you can watch the couple that we just did and kind of piece those together. See if you can't figure out how to go about something like this. All right, we'll wrap up here. Hopefully that helped. Remember, there's an arithmetic sequence video as well if needed. See you guys.